Hey, people on YouTube. I am queued up, and now I am going to get the Spreaker things happening. Hold, please. Uh, Hello and welcome. This is my podcast. I do what I want. I am your host, Hollis, and I am going to make this one super short because I am super tired. And even though I was meant to post this earlier today, it's technically Monday morning, but whatever. Here it is. I'm doing it. Uh, this episode is going to focus on an overview of what I'm doing for the next few years in writing. As many of you know, who actually listen to my podcast, thank you so much for doing that. Um, I have two fantasy series that I am working on. One of which is the Rashan series, of which To Save a World is the first book in the series. The Queen Witch, which I recently released in April, is the second book. And I will be talking about the upcoming books through 2026 for that series, as well as what I am calling the Chronicles of the Last Beacon series, Spare the Swallow, the historical fantasy I released in October of 2022, is the origin story for the main character of that series. And I have my plans through 2026 to have those books released as well. So I'm trying. Trying really hard to keep it going, keep you in reading materials, and hoping to, make this the full-time career situation. So help me, please. I'd appreciate it. A couple of quick announcements. The Drinking with Authors podcast that I was a guest on, that should be coming out in June. Um, I will have to double check with Erica, who is one of the hosts of that podcast, and just see what the exact date is. But I believe they said early June was when my episodes will be released. So hooray! Keep an eye out for that. And also, I actually did some voice work as Gunnery Sergeant Chancworth in the Smokepit Fairy Tales series. Author Trip is fantastic. It's a wonderful sci-fi series, a sci-fi war series. So if you're not into violence, this might be difficult for you. Trip is a war veteran who did a couple. I don't know exactly how many. I know he mentions on his channel. I'll tag it below in the description, but check it out. He's posting the audiobook chapters. I think the first few chapters are already posted. And once it gets in a little deeper, I am the voice of Chancworth, who is not the nicest of people, but it was fun. I liked being stern and kind of angry. So that was fun for me. But check that out. The other thing that I've been talking about is To Save a World. I am re-releasing it. I will have it. I'm planning on it by the end of this week. I've gone through the editing. I've done, and really all I have to do now is finish the page layouts. So I got this. It's gonna happen. I've got yeah. It's coming out in May, come hell or high water. Frankly, just as you know, if you've been listening or following my social media, I'm tired. So there's a lot going on for me, and I'm tired. So that's okay. We all get that way sometimes, but I will get it out in May as promised. It's just going to be, really late, but it will be end of week, Memorial Day release. So that will be fun. I'm very excited. Jumping right in. Talking about, well, the Rashan series first is what I have in my notes. So that's what we're going to do. Rashan series. So obviously the first and second books are already released. The second edition of To Save a World, which will be out available for purchase by the end of this week, making promises to myself here. We're going to do it. That is the first book. And then the second book, The Queen Witch, which I'm numbering the spines. So hooray. Those will all be out. Those are both out, so you have a couple of things to chew on, for this year, but I am hoping, to just make this a continuous series, and I do have it mapped out. So, the next book in the Rashawn series, which I am calling for now A Tear in the World. It's going to be a little bit more Aram focused, with the characters, which, for those of you who have read the book, Aram is definitely a fan favorite among my readers, which I totally understand and appreciate. And so, the other characters will also be present, but it will definitely be a much more Aram focused story, something where he kind of goes off and does a little bit more on his own. Jocelyn will be a bigger part of it. Obviously, they come in a pair most of the time, but he will have a lot, and you'll get to explore some other places in the world of Rashawn that you never got to explore before, get to learn some new mythologies. I'm gonna throw some paranormal things in there, which I'm actually very excited about. And, yeah, it's gonna be cool. But that one, I've got it outlined, and I'm going to have that set for release in 2024. So that's next year. Also, I'm hoping late 2024, I will be writing, the 4th book in the Rashawn series, which might just be a novella. It will or a novella, however you wanna pronounce that. Um, that one will be a little bit shorter because it will focus on the backstory of the main big bad from To Save a World, Kavan. He was I don't wanna, give you any spoilers, but for those of you who read it, you know who he is, and those of you who haven't, he's the big bad villain. He's the baddest baddie. Uh, and he's very, very powerful and that sort of thing. And I've had a few people tell me that they're really interested to know more about the backstory of this person and how he came to be the the sociopathic personality that he is. He's really not he really just is well, he's a sociopath. So I will call that Lack of Empathy is the working title, which for those of you who know anything about psychology or anything that is lack of empathy is one of the characteristics of a sociopath or a psychopath, and that's how I will be writing him. And I'm going to give his backstory, just sort of up until where he ends up in To Save a World, up until you get to that point, and you will learn about why he's, evil and all of that, and just what he came from, all of that. So I'm actually very excited to write that one. And then I am going to have a bit of fun. As you know, To Save a World is based on a Dungeons and Dragons game that my best friend and I played, and the characters are all that. And so I thought, why can't I bring some of my other Dungeons and Dragons characters into the world of Rashawn? I mean, why not? I'm the author. It's my world. Oh, it's my world. I do what I want. I get it. So I'm going to do a little, these will be volumes 5 through 7, but they will be listed as the histories. And they will be stories. The first one is called The Key. Two of them will release The Key, and another that I'm working title is Of Ambition and Unity. That's a working title. We'll see. And those two are slated to come out in 2025. So that's 2 books in the Rashawn series coming out in 25, and then in 2026, I have another one called Starflower's Way. Starflower is an elven druid of mine who I love. And I actually have played her uh, in several different campaigns, not just with my best friend, but I've also played her in campaigns where my brother is a DM and some friends and everything. And I really enjoy her character. I'm very excited to write Starflower, and yeah, and also the the main character in The Key, which will be the first, volume 5 of the whole series, but the first of the histories, that will be Kristen. And you're actually going to meet a much older version of Kristen in A Tear in the World. So I'm going to be tying that all in. So you are actually going to be introduced to this character as an old woman, as an old elvish woman that helps Aram in A Tear in the World, and then in volume 5, the histories, Kristen, you get to find out what happened to her when she was young and how she came to feel a certain way, and there's I got a whole plan of a conversation she's going to have with Aram and talk about her, "Don't make the same mistakes I did," sort of thing. Very cryptic, but she is, yeah, she's very cool, and she's kind of she's, essentially like a gypsy woman, but the fantasized version of gypsies, not the true, like, real life Romani version, that we see out in the world, but like Esmeralda from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, sort of persona more so, definitely much more of the fantasy of a gypsy as opposed to the reality. But I'm very, very excited. So you're going to get, what 2 books in 2024 from the Rashan series, A Tear in the World and Lack of Empathy. And then you will have 2 books from the Rashan series in 2025 and at least 1 book from the Rashan series in 26. So we'll see how fast I can get these things written. The books are going to get a little shorter. I know right now the books are like close to 400 pages or over in the case of To Save a World. And I feel a lot of first-time authors I've noticed with a lot of other authors, particularly authors who write fantasy or just epic adventure kind of books, I see it a lot that we tend to write longer books to start, and then we realize, "Oh, wait, if I'm writing a series, I don't have to put everything in one book. I can, like, cut this in half and have it be the next book. I don't have to I can boil these down to something much more digestible for a weekend, something around 200 to 250 in pages instead of double that, and and then I have more left over for another book when it's time to write it. So and I can pump them out faster too, of course, because if it's less pages, then we can write them faster, we can get them to you faster, and that's actually the whole plan. But I have noticed with other authors that I read, and I read their early books, the early books are pretty thick, and then they start to get a little wiser, and they start cutting down, the page counts get a little lower, but, the quality isn't sacrificed. But you just realize as you become more experienced, I think, or at least I have felt this way, that you don't need all that. You don't need to make it quite as long. You can chill out a little bit, and I am looking forward to getting things written a little more quickly. So, and I'm really looking forward to sharing different parts of the world of Rashan with you, because I really did build this whole world where the character, Ethne and Darian and Aram and Yoselin, Tim and Jeeve, like you haven't heard about a lot of what all you see is the world through their eyes, but the world is very diverse. And there is so much that I planned into the world building of Rashan that hasn't made it to any of the books thus far. And yes, for those of you who are big fans of the character Jeeve, that a lot of people pronounce it Giev because it's spelled Giev, but it's like the proper pronunciation of the city Kyiv in the Ukraine. It's not Kiev, it's Kyiv. And that's how I spell Jeeve, because I'm special. I don't know why I did that, but that's how I chose to spell it. That's how I was hearing it and seeing it in my brain. So ta-da, I'm the author. That's what we do sometimes. So the character Jeeve, he actually, you know him in To Save a World and The Queen Witch quite well, but I also am planning to write, possibly for another book in 2026 for the Rashawn series, later 2026, talking more about Jeeves' life as a traveling shaman before he met the characters and his personal experiences there. So that's something that I'm really excited to share with everyone, and I hope you're really excited to read it. But the other book series that I have, which is a historical fantasy, once again, sorry, I have an itch for those of you watching the video. Um, the historical fantasy, which Spare the Swallow is, if you read the introduction, you'll know immediately I'm obsessed with the ancient Etruscans of Italy, and I based the fantasy race of Fens very strongly on ancient Etruscan culture. Obviously, I take some creative liberties and have a lot of fun, but I write them a lot of the cultural traditions, what they eat, how they dress, what they look like, so on and so on and so forth. That's all very Etruscan. And they're really fun, but it's very, much a historical fantasy in that I blend a lot of ancient history into that book, and again, it's not there are a lot of Easter eggs in there. If you know your history of that particular time period, you will notice a lot. You'll go, "Oh, oh, oh, I see, I see." And it's fun for me because my degree is in world history, a specialization in ancient cultures, the Etruscans, of course. So I love to do that. And continuing with that theme, not entirely accurate for all you other historians out there. Obviously, it's historical fantasy. I take liberties to suit my plots. Um, I never claim it to be accurate, but I do claim to have the Easter eggs. That series continues on in the same context where in the main character, Lucretia, she continues on. I'm not going to spoil Spare the Swallow for you, but she does continue on in a lot of things of what I am going to call the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon. And in Spare the Swallow, she is the beacon, as the gods call her the beacon or have designated her as such, and you will understand why. Go read the book, then you'll know. You'll know what's up and you'll understand why that origin story gives birth to this entire series. And and again, no spoilers, but the main character Lucretia goes through a tremendous amount of loss, probably the biggest loss you can suffer or comprehend. So, that's huge, and I also enjoy reading psychological studies. I'm by no means an expert, but I enjoy reading, what other people who are smarter than me have figured out and learning about that. So, I thought it would be really interesting for me, and maybe for readers, to base the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon on the stages of grief. And, the stages of grief, and these they don't always come in this order, but they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Acceptance is almost always the last stage, but the other ones, they can happen whenevs. It used to be thought that they would go in a certain order, I think, but in reality, at least as far as what's been explained to me and what I've read, that these stages of grief can happen in any order, and you can just volley between them. You might go into anger, and then you go into depression, and then you can volley right back into anger again, because until you hit acceptance, you can bounce around within the grief cycle wherever you might go. And that is what Lucretia is doing for the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon. I am almost done with volume 1 of the Chronicles. It's called Ignited. It is you start out the book, the main character is in her stage of heavy depression, but then this is her transition into anger. She is really angry, and that's why it's called Ignited. So that will be late this year. I'm almost done writing it. I've just got a couple more chapters and then is done. The chronicles are going to be similar to what I mentioned in the Rashan series. I'm not going to make them super long. Spare the Swallow is like 370 pages ish, around there. Again, it's a long one. I'm not going to make the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon as long. Many of them, in my eyes, will be novellas because they will be some of her experiences throughout her journeys will they will not be they will not be long. They will be impactful for the character, but they will not be something that's necessarily a long story. Sometimes it's just a little short one. So Ignited it will be coming out in late 2023 this year, so I'm thinking probably around November, maybe sooner. And then after that, I'm going to volume 2 is going to be called Rampage, and this is the main character being in a state of anger. And again, these will all be historical fantasy, so I mean, there's a lot of magic involved. There are different races and, like races as far as elves and dwarves and things like that are concerned. And Dockfens, the race that I made up, of which Lucretia is one. She is a Dockfen. They become kind of a lost race. And of course, there are humans on the planet as well. But Rampage will be her in the heat of her anger, and she basically is joining up with any army, whoever wherever she can fight, and she's fighting it. I will continue to have all of the history Easter eggs in there. Again, not entirely accurate. It's fantasy, but it's fun. And for those of you who enjoy history, you'll be able to point, and be like, oh, I know that name. Oh, I see what she's doing here. And I like to look up a lot of things like the ancient terms that were used for the countries and things. We don't call them that anymore today, but what the ancient peoples called their own country way back when, that's what I'm calling them in the book. So if you know some deep dive stuff, if you have a particular interest in certain things, Ignited is taking place in ancient Britain. So that's fun, but I'm not calling it Britain. I'm calling it Prydean because that's what at least the Katavulani tribe called the island of, the main island of the British Isles that we know of today as, England and Scotland, essentially. Or England, Scotland, and Wales, essentially. So, but they didn't call it that. The ancient Katavulani didn't, which is really cool. So there's one little Easter egg for you if you didn't know. And yes, I did have to look that up. And I had a lot of fun researching it. And then Rampage will take place across many different places in the old world, because she will be on the move all the time. She'll be moving with armies. She will be going where the wars are. She will be fighting. It will be a pretty violent one, and it will probably would be one of the shorter ones. That will come out in 2024, probably early 2025. Um, it I'm going to release volume 3 of the Chronicles, which is something I am calling Epiphany of Hurt, and this will be her transition out of anger into bargaining. This the stage of bargaining in the grief stages, because she will realize that she's been doing, even though she has in her mind been fighting for just causes and on, she has this epiphany of, "Oh my god, what have I been doing all this time?" I have just been on a spree, and it's not healthy, and it's not good, and she moves on into the bargaining stage, which, I'm going to have some fun with and figure out and delve into that. I'm doing a lot of psychological research for the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon, which I'm enjoying very much. And I hope you'll enjoy it too. Like I said, absolutely no expert. I simply enjoy reading about it. Have always found the study of psychology very interesting, so it's something that I have always sort of casually uh, read about on my own as just from my own education, personal education, and I will be taking that information and, obviously when I want to look up a specific fact, I look it up and I try to find the most credible source about how it works and use it for the books that way. Uh, and then after that, in I think volumes 4 and 5. Volume 4 will come out in 2025 as well. That one I am saying In Search of Peace is the working title of that one. That is, she is in the bargaining stage, shows she's bargaining with herself. She's saying, "Okay, if I can just do more good things, if I can maybe not be so violent, if I can do this, do that, maybe I can earn back my good feelings. Maybe I could earn back something good. Maybe I can deserve something good." And so she's trying to do all these bargains, these trade-offs, and that she's searching for peace, peace in her heart and in her mind for the heavy weight that she carries from what happened in the origin story of Spare the Swallow. There will be a volume 5, which I will probably release in 2026. That will likely be a denial stage. I will likely be doing that, and I would say for this series, um, she will jump around a lot in her she will do the thing that I mentioned people tend to do, or at least I've read people tend to do, which is to volley between all the different stages, and, of course, it's going to take her a very long time to get to acceptance, but and I don't have a working title for volume 5 yet, but that again will be probably 2026, but I'm really looking forward to writing this. I think I'm going to learn a lot because I'm gonna have to research a lot of psychology and a lot of history, which excites me, and so I'm going to learn a lot of things that I find extremely, enriching and interesting, so I'm very pleased about that, and I can't wait to write both of these series. The Rashawn series, obviously, I do some research for those here and there, but since it is pure fantasy in a totally different world, uh, I could do what I want. I could just make something up. It doesn't matter. I could have, you know, mountain ranges just be somewhere. It's fine. I could do what I could do. It's a more free form when it comes to writing the story and throw some magic around, and that's what fantasy writers do. We say, yeah, put some magic on that. Yeah, that's why that happened. Don't worry about it. Yeah, oh, the god said so and so, so they just that made that happen. Miracle, woohoo. And it's really easy. Well, not easy necessarily, but it's really fun as a creative person that loves to make have my mind wander. And with the Chronicles of the Lost Beacon, it's also extremely exciting to write, but in a different way because since this is historical fantasy, and while it's not entirely accurate, I am for my own enjoyment, putting a lot of historical Easter eggs in there and things like that, and doing kind of the psychological bend on it as well. I'm getting to do a lot of research and learning that I personally enjoy very much, and frankly, it also making the historical fantasy and basing it on actual events, and events that, by the way, I'm not going to choose events that are super well known for the most part. I am choosing events that were impactful, probably at the time, but we don't really hear about in history class anymore, and that's something that I will find fun. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you enjoy history, if you just enjoy doing that, but those things, they also kind of write the outline for me. in a lot of ways, and all I have to decide is how my characters behave and react within those situations, which is great. 'Cause it makes my outlines easier, and it's less prep, because all I have to, well, actually, it's still just as much prep, because whatever doesn't come into just conceiving out of spontaneously would then go into research, but, it's great. They're 2 very different series. Of course, it's all fantasy because that's what I write. I love reading everything, but that's what I write, and I'm very, very excited to share it with all of you. So I hope you're excited to read them. As you all know, if you listen to the podcast or, follow me at all or generally pay attention to the words that I say, I would love to be a full-time author. I would love to not need my day job. I love my day job, and I might not ever leave it, but I would love to not need it. And I would love to have my life be something that I can just, if I wanted to take a long vacation, but I just write on my vacation, I that would be splendid. Just have, do isn't it the life that we all dream of, is just to be our own boss and do whatever best suits our personal lifestyle? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's how I feel anyway. So, I'm working on it. I'm planning ahead. I've got 3 years into the future planned out, and I'm gonna stick to my guns, and things might come a little later in the month sometimes, but I'm gonna work really hard on getting these books out and becoming prolific enough to make sure you all have enough reading material. I hope that entices you to make you happy. Once again, check out The Queen Witch, To Save a World is available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. The Queen Witch is available all those places. Basically just type in either of the book titles with my name, Hollis Joe McCullum. Uh, you'll you'll find it. Spare the Swallow, same deal. You will find them. Online retailers, of course, are where they're most abundantly available, but all you have to do if you would like to order that book is just, you can get the ISBN number from online or just the title and, of course, my name. You have those things. Go to a bookstore, order it from your local bookstore, because independent bookstores, they can order all the same books that the big guys can. They really can. They can order whatever, and you help support small business. So, that's really nice. They literally, they all order from the same thing called the Ingram List. Everybody in the world orders from the same place, and they all have access to it. So, yeah, if you wanna go into the independent store and say, "Would you please order me a copy of this?" Then it might take a couple of days longer than Amazon Prime, but I think that kind of thing is worth the wait. Sometimes it's fun to actually anticipate things like we used to back in the day. I feel like people, especially, um, younger people who don't remember having to wait for things to come in the mail, for weeks on end sometimes, and I know that a lot of stuff you still have to wait for, but, uh we used to need a lot more patience. And I think that the anticipation is actually quite exciting when you're looking forward to something, and it almost can make you enjoy reading it more. So, just a thought. I'm not sure. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this has been kept abbreviated enough for you. I have certainly enjoyed talking about my upcoming projects, and don't forget to check out me on Drinking with Authors coming up. Just go check out Drinking with Authors, the podcast, and see what they say in their announcements for upcoming episodes, that sort of thing. And as soon as I know the exact date, I will be sure to say so. And also check out Trip, the Smokepit Fairy Tale series. He will be writing the final book in that series, by the way, or releasing it soon. I think he is writing it or has even finished it, but he'll be releasing it pretty soon, to my understanding. And I think there are 10 or 11 books in the entire series. I have not read them all. I've read the first three. They're great. I'm really into it, but of course, I have a lot of other books that I want to read and write, so I'm a slow going, but I'm definitely going to finish that entire series. It is it is exciting. There is a lot of twists, or there are a lot of twists. It's yeah, if you love sci-fi, especially if you love kind of gritty war story sci-fi, strongly recommend the Smoke Pit Fairy Tales series. The first book is just called Smoke Pit Fairy Tales. The author is Tripp, Tripp, double P. And yeah, and I'll link his YouTube channel in the description so that you can actually check out his audiobook because he's releasing it chapter by chapter. The entire series is his plan here on YouTube. So if you prefer audiobooks, you got it. No worries. Thank you so much for joining me. My next episode will be my birthday, which is June 4th, which is a Sunday this year. And in the meanwhile, I hope that you all have a fantastic Memorial Day, that you enjoy things very much and generally enjoy life.